So we were hired. I think this is before. Actually, this is before the start of Glossa. So this had to be like 2004, 2005. I had a customer of mine who was starting an Elvis museum in Las Vegas on Industrial by Treasure Island, and he was acquiring a lot of Elvis's estate artifacts. And he came across a Mercedes custom limo built for Elvis by Mercedes. It was a stretch limo of an old four-door sedan. And when we got the car, it had been sitting in storage for over 20 years. And it hadn't been moved, it hadn't been started. It showed up on a flatbed to this tiny little shop where we started the business in Vegas. And when the car showed up, I mean, I remember popping the hood and there was like rat droppings and just all kinds of like, we found a dead rodent trapped underneath the car because when we came in the next morning after the shop had a really bad smell and there was a rodent stuck underneath the engine. And we got the car up in the air so that we could actually find the rodent. It was a decayed, it looked like a rat or a mouse. It was probably about this big. But I remember getting in the car and him saying, hey, I need it to look as good as possible. We got in the car. It was kind of interesting because it had a Sony TV, right? And it had a cell phone. And I didn't think the cell phones were something that was available until what? The mid 80s, right? I think 84, 85. And this thing had a cell phone in it. It was super oxidized. I told the guy that bought it, who he'd started the Elvis Museum, I'm like, look, man, I don't even know if this car will look any much different, just clean. And we spent probably a week on and off working with paint. Now, you remember, Glossa didn't exist at that time. So back then, we're using 3M and McGuire's and whatever we could find or pro products to cut and polish this car. But I think that when I was done, I remember the car looking super sharp and super clean. And the guy that owned the Elvis Museum looked at me and said, dude, this looks like you painted it. This looks great. When I saw the Elvis movie, I saw the Mercedes. And that was when I come to find out, I Googled it, and that was the Mercedes, his original Mercedes that was in the movie that they showed you was the one I worked on. And so it reminded me of working on this car. When they showed it up at the jet on the runway, when he's talking to his wife, and they were divorced, but when I saw the car, I told my wife, I said, hey, I worked on that car. And that was kind of a cool thing to see in Elvis Museum. And then on Gold Rush Rally, we did the tour of Graceland. And I saw the car then. The guy that started the Elvis Museum couldn't make it work. And so the Elvis estate had bought the car back. And when I was on the property with Gold Rush, I saw the car. And I told, because we have a private tour, I told the curator, I worked on that car. That's why it looks that way. And he said, yeah, we bought it from a guy in Vegas. And so looking around, it's kind of crazy over the years of the different cars and the different circumstances of different people and celebrities that maybe we didn't have direct contact. I never met Elvis, but I went to Graceland. I was in the car he sat in. I sat in the seat where he sat, and I felt this heavy presence in the car. And I asked my guys to get in the car without asking questions, said, when you're inside that car, I want you to shut the doors, and I want you to tell me if you feel anything. And two of my workers immediately jumped out of the car and said they got goosebumps all up and down their arms because they didn't know what they were feeling in the car. They said it was unreal. And I said, this is Elvis Presley's car. And they're like, they're Latin. And they said, Elvis Presley? Elvis Presley? I said, yeah. And they said, I could feel something in the car. That was crazy. I didn't feel like it was haunted, but you felt this, like when we went to Graceland with Gold Rush, we all mentioned when we walked in the front door and he's got that staircase that goes up the staircase, and there was like 3 or 4 of us in the family, and we were looking up the staircase. We felt like he was there and he was we just felt like presence. It was very like pressure, like something was pressing down on us, that he was just gonna come walking down the stairs. And the presence, I told everybody that when I worked on this car a long time ago, that was his Mercedes limo, I felt the same type of presence in that car. It was unreal. In fact, I got to work with Wayne Newton and work on his Corniche that's in his museum. And I had dinner with Wayne and his daughter, who was a friend of mine, one night. And I shared the story with him, and he said, 100%, son, that was his presence. I told him the story, and he thought that was pretty cool. He's a part of everything he touched. And everything he touched made everybody feel a certain way. It wasn't scary, but it was more of like a rush kind of feeling. And I got to get the car started, and I got to drive it. And I just kept looking into the rearview mirror, thinking I'm going to see this guy with jet black hair and these cool black glasses saying, "Come on, son, let's get going." And that was kind of a cool experience. What we learned about Elvis is that he never said no to anybody, especially the Colonel. And the Colonel was a guy that basically found circus acts and would promote people at circuses and travel the country. And he basically saw Elvis at some amateur singing contest and walked in by chance and saw this incredible person with an amazing charisma and dance in a way that nobody's ever seen a human being dance. And so when you watch the movie, his presence was like so strong and so overwhelming that people would just faint. When he sang and he moved, it was like the world shaked and nothing, everything stopped. And he made everybody feel special. He made everybody feel connected, like they were more than who they were. And it made them feel like they weren't in this world. So if I could explain what I've never met Elvis, because I would have loved to meet Elvis, is that he was extremely talented. He was extremely loving. He was a family person. Family was like everything to him. He always wanted to entertain people, and his home base was Las Vegas. And the crazy part is that his home base was Las Vegas, and I grew up in Boston. And Vegas, I've spent more time living in Vegas than any place. Even where I grew up, I left Philadelphia at 16 years old, moved to Boston, spent 8 years in Boston, and then from Boston to Vegas. And there's something about Vegas that when you try to leave, it sucks you back in. And Elvis tried to leave Vegas many, many times, and it always sucked him back in. The last time he used the car was in Vegas, and that was the car that would pick up and drop him off. It was the Vegas Limo. And he had a lot of cars and jets, and they say that was his favorite automobile, was that Mercedes stretch limo. Looking back, that was a really cool experience. And you know, I think about that. That wasn't about, I didn't charge a lot of money when I did that car because I wasn't really confident that I could get to the end result other than just clean it. And when I was done the car, I felt like I had been part of history, that I had been part of something, even though I had no direct relationship with Elvis. I felt like that I contributed to share his story.
Buying a used car, especially sight unseen, can be a very scary process, and you should never do that without getting the car inspected first. And the best and easiest way to have that done is using the Lemon Squad. They are an amazing resource that can almost immediately inspect a car for you anywhere in the country. They have no hidden fees, they're the largest company in the industry, and they have the fastest response times in the industry. So check them out now at the link in the description below. You can use the code VINwiki for a 10% discount. It is the best way not only to find out if you're being scammed, find out if the car is a piece of garbage, and to make sure that you're buying exactly the car that you're looking for. So next time you buy a car, make sure to use the Lemon Squad.